evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of the 13%. Thank you so much for joining. Hello out there in YouTube, Facebook, and all the other pages that we happen to be streaming inland. We are your hosts, Cynthia McDonald and Arthur Ward. Arthur,
Yes.
How are you?
I'm wonderful, Miss Cynthia. How are you today?
I am wonderful, Mr. Arthur. Thank you for asking. I'm really excited about tonight's show tonight.
Are you?
I said tonight twice. Oh, well.
Uh,
Yeah, okay. So we have a guest on a YouTube creator and also author, Josh Scandlen. He's going to be joining us momentarily. But before we do that, let's get a little housekeeping out of the way. Please, everyone who is watching, make sure that you like this video. Share it on your various social media platforms and hit that bell so that you can get notifications every time that we go live. And don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you like what we do, if you like the content and all that prepares on YFNA News, consider being a Patreon. Also, we have other links that you can support. I've actually started a little something called brand ambassadorship. Have you heard of that, Arthur?
yes, I have.
Okay, cool. Well, I am now a brand ambassador for Greenwood Dist clothing. So the link for those particular t-shirts and hoodies and all types of things, they're kind of cool. So make sure you guys check that out as well. And also other links to support our fellow mod. Make sure that you do that. And also we are supporting Tamara Johnson Shealy's run for U.S. Senate. So make sure that you guys follow her on her page and make sure that you support her run because she is running on an ADOS platform. All right. So I think that we got all that out the way, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. You want to add like housekeeping, Arthur?
No.
Okay, cool.
No. We've done enough. I don't even like picking up brooms. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I should know, right? No.
That's right. You should know.
I should know.
Shit.
On the floor. Okay, well, we got all that out the way, but so we want to definitely introduce our guest, Mr. Josh Scandlen. But before we do that, kind of wanted Arthur, can you kind of give a little backstory on how this whole thing came about?
Okay. Well, I was actually on YouTube looking for another video that had been recommended by another ADOS website. And I was looking for it, right? And then I ran across Josh's video, and I just decided to sit and listen to see what this guy had to say. And after, I was weirded out a little bit, and then I got into it a little bit, and I was like, let me talk to this guy. So I put my information in his chat stream and asked him to contact me, and he did. And so the contact resulted in this show tonight. So that's what happened.
Cool. All right. So I got a little bit of that video. I wanted to play some of it so that everyone can kind of get some, I believe, content to context.
Okay.
To context. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get that you did going.
How Republicans can get behind reparations. I'm telling you, my friends, hear me out before you hang up and scream bloody murder. Hear me out. I was thinking about this. So I was watching this guy, JPTV 2000, I can't remember. He's a guy who was in Williston, North Dakota, doing oil field stuff. And when I first left USAA, I had thought about, before I first left USAA and I said, I'm getting out of this business. I work for a couple of crappy old firms and then started my own firm. I said, man, if I get... The first year went by and I wasn't making that much money. I was like, oh, this could be bad. I'm going to blow through my money. What am I going to do? And I said, I'm not going back to the industry. And so I said, maybe I'll go get a job in the oil field. And long story short, I was looking at all these videos on working in the oil field and stuff. And I said, all right, maybe I'll do that. And I came across this black guy, JPTV2000, I think is a YouTube account. Anyway, I actually emailed him to interview him because I thought it was pretty interesting about the oil fields in Williston, North Dakota. Like, thoughts. This is after I decided I was not going to do it. I said it might be interesting to see what this guy has for people who are looking for work up there. And we never connected, just never came up to it. But anyway, long story short, I've been following his YouTube channel anyway. And he's back in Mississippi. I'm not sure. He's from Mississippi, Laurel, Mississippi. And I'm not sure from where I don't know, like, why he's back, if the oil field, I just don't know anything about what his situation is. But he's back in Laurel, Mississippi. And he's interviewing all these guys, all these black folks. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, there's no way Trump can't make headway with these guys. They're Christian, they're entrepreneur, they're just good, salt of the earth people. And I said, there's no way that Biden has more than Trump to offer these guys. No way. But the issue is that the Republican brand is so bad that these guys probably aren't even going to look at it. But then you got to think the Democratic brand was so bad, because hell, that was part of the Klan. I mean, the Democrats are slave owners. I mean, and yet here we are. Hell, John Lewis just died today, and John Lewis is a Democrat through and through. And yet 100 years ago, there's no way John Lewis would have been a Democrat. So things can change. But anyway, so here's the story about reparations that I want to say, and I think there's an opportunity here that's a win for blacks and a win for Republicans, if we can think this through. And when I say Republicans, I hate to go into the dichotomy, it's not really a false dichotomy, of red versus blue, but in some ways that's all we got in America. I mean, there's a Libertarian, the Green Party. None of these parties are, as we sit here today, are an opportunity for radical transformation of America. It's just not. You got to take over the Republic, like AOC did with the Democrats. You got to do it from inside. Kind of like the Tea Party tried to some success.
In this particular video, Josh was actually making a case for why Republicans, namely conservatives, could get behind, reparations. So I'm just going to bring him on and let him stake the case. Okay. All right. Just one moment, please. Let's go ahead and bring on Mr. Josh Scandlen.
Hey.
Yeah.
Welcome, Josh, to the 13%. How are you this evening?
I'm doing fine. My hair's a lot shorter since that video, guys, because my wife, she does the for me, saves me money.
I hear you. Mine kind of grew out a little bit since I put videos because I'm afraid to go to the barber. So let's just go from there.
Well, it's so much easier. Just comb your hair with your fingers, just like that, and done. I tell you.
Right. Exactly. Well, welcome again to the 13%. Thank you so much for actually joining us. So let's just get into it, Josh. Why don't you just go ahead and just first tell us a little bit about you, and tell us why you even started pondering on this in the first place.
My parents had Gus Hall, Angela Davis, stickers and stuff, all kinds of gear. Very, very progressive activists, hippies from San Francisco. And long story short, so long story short, I just was always kind of in the progressive movement for sure. The first vote I ever casted was for Barbara Kolsky and Mike Dukakis, who both ran on the Democratic ticket, and I was in Maryland by then. My dad, when my parents split, my dad had moved to D.C. and he came back from Maine with this album called Go-Go Crankin'. And for you guys from Chicago, you might not know what Go-Go is, but Go-Go is kind of like the Washington D.C., like very hip hop, pre-hip hop, just a lot of Chuck Brown. It's a lot of it's just fantastic. And there's no white people in Maine had ever. I mean, it's just nuts. And I'll never forget. I said, man, it just blew my mind. It's kind of like the first time I ever heard punk rock. I was like, this is awesome. Long story short, my dad moved to D.C. and no one could understand what a kid from Maine was saying, and I couldn't understand black people from D.C. And so I had to adjust my way of speaking. And anyway, long story short, then I went in the Army, and the Army did everything for me. If it wasn't for the Army, I would have been up to no good, and who knows where I would have been. And I've always had a feeling for blacks from World War II who came back and were just treated But it's to this day. I was just reading today about a guy named Isaac Woodard, and I found him on another kind of right-wing site, Mark Stein, who talked about this guy, Isaac Woodard, who's a sergeant in World War II. He comes back and gets his head beaten in by the cops in South Carolina. I've just, we have a history of this, and it's just not right.
Right.
Lastly, I've always been in favor of legalization of drugs. I'm a libertarian in that regard. I think if you want to do that, you have a right to do it. It's your body to do whatever you want. Just don't hurt me. And but I hate the idea of the incarceration societies. It's not a free society when all these people are being incarcerated for this stuff. And it's always been a pet peeve of mine. But anyway, that's my kind of my take. And I don't have any white guilt or anything like that. I just don't care. I mean, people are like, oh, you're white. No, I have none of that. I'm just a regular poor kid from Maine who has happened to see a different perspective than some other people. And if I could share that perspective to say that it's not all this false dichotomy of left versus right. There's a middle ground that might be above that line of left and right. I think people, if they can see there's a different point of view that doesn't violate who they are, that there could be some more, I don't know, maybe peace in the world. I don't know how to say that. Yeah. But anyway, that's my backstory.
Okay. Now, I'm glad that we had our conversation pre the video, because I find that with a lot of actually decent thinking white people like yourselves, you don't have a lot of information as far as like the Black journey in this country. And I try to tell white folks that Black people were infrastructural to this country from the very beginning, way before this country was even a country. My first ancestors on my father's side got here in 1626, which is a lot further than a lot of immigrants from Europe, and they came like much later on in the late 19th century and the early 20th century.
Absolutely.
Slavery's not that far behind. My great-great-grandmother was born into slavery, and she died when I was 4.
Really?
Yes.
So she was born a slave, and she
was born a slave. Yeah, she was born. She was born a slave, and she died in the late 1950s when I was 4 years old. And she was always traumatized. Her left hand was like this from work, from just work. She lost a sibling in a fire. And this is how the fire happened. My great-great-grandmother, her mother, was being used by her slave master sexually, got her pregnant, and his wife, who was angry at, her and this, so her sibling at 2 days old was taken from her by the slave master's wife and dropped in the fireplace, and she forced her and my great-great-grandmother to watch. So that's the kind
because the guy was having sexual relations and the wife of the guy was pissed off. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly.
She took it out on the young.
Yeah. But these are the kinds of things that and this is kind of like I was trying to relate to you about the GI Bill. That's actually was pretty common during the middle and the early 20th century for Black soldiers not to get it. It's just like in Mississippi, over 3,000 people in Mississippi after World War II got the GI Bill. Only 2 Black people out of that 3,000 got it. Now, it was a lot more than So it's kind of like that's what reparations is about. Basically, is because of the wealth transfer that occurred from 1619 up till the year in which we were freed, 1865, supposedly. You had all of those years of wealth transfer from free labor. And then you also had all of the assaults from Jim Crow, from Reconstruction, then to Jim Crow, on up to now. And my parents, they not only experienced redlining, but my dad was one of those Korean veterans who was denied the GI Bill, being honorably discharged from the military, and so was Cynthia's dad. So, all of this stuff, and Black people, when it comes to reparations, they're not asking for anything extra. They're asking for two things: what was taken and normalization in American society. That's it. And I think that's fair.
Arthur.
Yes, sir.
My thing is, I think a lot of white people don't understand when you say Black people, I think they think this whole thing with people of color. And that actually annoys me too. And so if you guys don't mind describing, we're not talking about some guy who comes here from freaking, Argentina. You know what I'm saying? I think that go ahead.
No, actually, we're not talking about anyone other than American descendants of slavery.
Exactly.
And that's not hard to figure out.
Yeah.
Anybody that has at least for the past 12 years has declared on documents being either colored, Negro, African American, you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And has at least one relative that descends from American slavery should be eligible for reparations. It's not that complicated. And considering that 95% of African Americans that descend from slavery still live in the country, with the exception of some Black people that escaped to Canada during the Underground Railroad times, it's not that hard to figure out who's eligible and who isn't.
Yeah, I was going to say that I actually traced my lineage back to slavery in 30 minutes.
The slavery back in, you were able to find out at 30 minutes, Cynthia, is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't difficult at all. A good resource that I was privy to is using the Church of Latter-day Saints. They have a pretty good a genealogy library. You can even use it for free. And Ancestry.com is actually, I believe that they're owned by the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Really? I did not know that.
That's right.
Yeah, so they have a lot of those records, and oftentimes you can use the census records in order for you to trace your lineage back. Matter of fact, that's how I went when I was telling you when we spoke. Yeah. I was able to find out that my great-grandfather was a World War I veteran.
Yeah.
And I already, of course, I knew about my father being a Korean vet. And that's how I also found out that he was privy to the Red Summer of 1919 after he came back from Europe, fighting in Europe. So it's not, and I know that and I believe that there was some comments about who would get it and things about.
Well, who would pay and who would get it?
Video.
That was what they're saying. Well, we had this one guy who's from Africa. He goes, "Why? I don't want it, and why should I pay or get it?" And I said, and I'll let you guys. It seemed to me, I said, but that's not your beef. I mean, you came here on the back of, I hate to say it, but you are here on the back of all of our experiences combined. Thus, you are kind of benefiting from the ground that was laid. So you kind of do. I don't know.
Yes, matter of fact, he's actually here because of the benefit of Booker T. Washington. You know that Booker T. Washington actually advocated for Caribbeans and Africans to be able to come here through immigration because they were trying to pass a bill which excluded Africans and Caribbeans from immigrating to this country. Even though the bulk of them, and actually the bulk of Caribbeans and Africans did not come until after 1965. Okay. Kind of like after the smoke cleared. You know what I'm saying? But as far as a legal case, the group of people that call themselves the American descendants of slavery, we start our legal case from 1776 because that's when the country legally began. Even though we were here way before that, but that's where we begin our.
Well, my thing with that guy is that it's when people come here for the largesse that America is today. They come here to leave behind a society that's less than what they think they're going to get here.
Right.
They're doing it because of what the slaves had built.
Yes.
And also, you see what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm sitting there thinking, you are here because of what was established previous to you. And
exactly.
The previous to you is the good and bad. I mean, there's lots of good and there's lots of bad. I get it. There's more good than bad. We all
right.
love America, but you can't just say that wasn't part of me. I said, no, it doesn't work like that. You are here because of the previous stuff. And as such, you're welcome here. It's fine, but you kind of have to contribute to what I would. And here's, guys, what I think as a Republican, I hate to even say this, more of a conservative, I say, this is a takings. And what a taking simply means is we took property and we didn't compensate for the property. And when
right.
you do that, you're supposed to, it's no different with the eminent domain stuff. If the government comes and takes your house to put a road through it, they have to make you right. They cannot they're not supposed to just do that.
Right.
We did this with human beings.
Yes.
And we did not compensate them because we had free labor for sure. And I don't care who gripes about that. The facts are that's a taking, and under the Constitution, you're supposed to make people whole for that.
Right, exactly.
Wrong, but Josh, those people are dead. No, it's still they're still. It just frustrates me. I said that's simply not true. If they paid the taxes, but they couldn't use a GI Bill, they might be dead. That doesn't mean it's just we're all free and clear of the past. And
exactly, and see the thing is like it's not like the country didn't pay reparations. What they did was after Lincoln was assassinated and then Andrew Johnson became president, the land that was intended to be handed over to the slaves, they took that back, gave it back to the original owners, and also compensated the former slave masters for their loss in property, but they left us out there with nothing.
See, I didn't know that until you and I talked, Art.
Yeah.
I'm saying like that's, and look, I tell you, my parents were pretty far lefties. I'm telling you, not too many people, white people, know wwho Angela Davis was. And I do, you know what I'm saying? What I'm just telling you right now is that I did not know that. And I'd never even heard about the Red Summer that you shared with me, or the Red
Summer of 1919.
Yeah. And again, I don't have it. Like I'm so guilty because I'm white. I don't have any of that. Well, I'm just saying this is a historical fact, and to pretend it doesn't exist, you don't need to be guilty, or even you just gotta say, look, let's address this because it has effect on people today. And
it's like, and see, people gotta understand that lynching did not happen until after slavery, because before slavery, you're talking about messing with somebody's property. You understand what I'm saying? Now, after legally you're not allowed to have human property, and then you have slaves, despite their deprived condition, still creatively coming up with stuff. We basically agreed with segregation.
Yeah.
I said, okay, fine.
That's what you
want us over here? Okay. We went all the way over here.
Right.
Built a town.
Right.
Built an economy. Okay, and became self-sufficient, and then the whites burned it down.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like, well, what do you want us to do? You don't want us near you, and then when we get away from you and we do for self, you don't want us to do that. So
right, and that's still in effect today.
That's still in effect today.
You can't just say, well, that was 100 years ago.
Right. Well, as a matter of fact, right now in Georgia, this is happening right now. 19 black families got together, bought some land.
Yeah, I saw that.
In rural Georgia, and the white folks are upset about that. So you don't want me living next door to you, but when I go way over here and make my own stuff, you don't want that either. So I don't know what white people want sometimes.
There's a libertarian black guy named Young Ripa on YouTube, and he talks.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. He's like, if they don't want my money, or what do you say? If they don't want me to come to their business, I'm not going to give them my money. I said, look, if people want, who cares? Just as long as they're not hurting anybody. It's nuts to me. Anyway, he talks about it all the time. He goes, look, if people don't want my money because I'm black, then I don't want to give them my money. I'm not going to force my money down their throat, but I will go to somebody who wants my money regardless. And I always thought that was a good way to look at it. But with that said, he doesn't have to force a law to say, you have to stay over here and we have to stay over here and use the government to benefit these people over here. And guys, one thing, that actually annoys me more than anything is that what I think white people don't think, and this is Republicans generally don't have a big picture. Is you can see what's going on right now in some of these places, and with the various Antifa riots and stuff. And when no cops are there to police up people's, to protect people's property, which is also what you guys share with me.
Right.
No cops are there to defend the righteous owners of these places. And then what happened later is like what you guys said. I'm just kind of repeating back to you the way I understand it. Is that other people were able to swoop in there and buy the land for cheap and turn around and make good on what the black people have built.
Right.
Some of the same thing is happening now with some of these towns, and I'm sitting there thinking that's not good. So basically what's happening is when the order backs up and just lets chaos run supreme, the idea that white people might not end up on the short end of the stick at some point, I think that's silly to think. That doesn't mean it's going to be this race. I don't think there's any race war. I'm just saying what happens when law and order backs up and allows freaking idiots to go and kill people and just ransack people and stuff. It's not good for anybody. And you guys and the blacks of America are living and can attest to that exactly what happened at Tulsa. And the same thing could be happening. And for white people not to see that this is happening, that it could happen to us too, is I find to be very short-sighted. And again, because there are a lot of evil people out there of all races. Mm-hmm. And I'm just telling you right now, and there's, I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus died for us all. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of evil out there. Yeah. And if we don't maybe come to grips in a middle of the road thing, evil can grow while the good people just kind of sit in the back. And I think a lot of white people just, they I don't know. Maybe not just white people. Maybe it's just Republican. I don't know. But they don't see what could happen.
But generally, this is one thing that confuses me about white people. What is it about us who have generally been we're more accommodating toward white people than we are with each other. Okay, that makes white people upset when they see black people either being happy in some kind of way, or self-sufficient in some kind of way, or agreeing with segregation and doing better without segregation. Okay, I'm all the way over here. I'm not trying to live next door to you. I'm not trying to date your daughter. I'm not trying to come up in your business. And when I make my own thing over here, away from you, you get mad about that too. So I don't understand the psychology. Do you understand it? Could you explain that to me?
Just no.
Well, I will jump in and just say this, and I think that Dr. King said this best, and especially when we're talking, and I hope that we can kind of segue into, some of the other things. When we even talk about behavior, right, of people and how they have a tendency to give you backlash, like when you're trying to do something proper for yourself. They don't necessarily feel that should be the case, like the 19 families in Georgia. And it's so important to really look at policy and things of that nature. Dr. King said is that you can't legislate morality. Yeah. You can regulate behavior, right? And I even think about we can ask these questions all day about what is the rationale behind white supremacy, racism. Like, what is that rationale? What does it look like? Hey, puppy. And to me, I oftentimes look at it as it's not rational. It's not a logical way of thinking or even living, because even in some cases, as piggyback on what you said, Josh, is that in some cases, it has a tendency to even hurt white people. Yeah. One of the things that I was mentioning to Author this weekend when we were talking about, the show and, how we wanted to go, and we were kind of pondering on this whole system that we are living under when we're talking about systemic racism, institutional racism, things of that nature. I mentioned that oftentimes you look at this whole thing and you have to have a bottom caste in order to keep it going, and that is what slavery was at the time when we even first heard the word white. Yeah. It was about really creating a caste of folk to be in perpetual labor.
Yes.
Right? To do the bidding of, the country so that it can get off its feet and be a nation, right? And it floated into our economics and our laws and our policies and even our way of life and even how we even think, and it definitely has influenced our worldview. But even in that particular system, as white supremacy, racism had to reinvent itself in some cases because of people protesting, rioting, pushing back against the system and saying that, okay, well, this is not going to work. We're going to have to reinvent it some kind of way, but we still got to have a bottom caste. You still have to have a section of the people that is supposed to benefit to be the sacrifice. There's because I think about how this system is based on keeping a certain section of people at the top economically and socially, and a certain section of people at the bottom. And then you have insertion points into the system where some people have some semblance of normalcy and some people do not. But even the people who may look like you, Josh, if they don't necessarily have the socioeconomic wherewithal, the prowess, what have you, or even was privy to know what to take advantage of and what not to take advantage of, oftentimes they end up being the sacrifice.
Man, I could not agree with that more. I 100% agree with that. Absolutely. And they don't know.
True, they don't.
They don't. And we have a question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I could not agree with that more. And that's this is going back to my case for the conservative, and I'm sweating here because I got because I get fired up on this. Sorry, but I also have a big a dog on me. But this is another thing too, where I think the case for reparations needs to be heard from people on my side. Is look, the corporatist elite don't care about us. Now we might be let's just for simplicity say we have a white middle class, a white upper middle class that might be ahead of the majority of African Americans. You know what I'm saying? Down here, we could say that financially, and thus we feel secure. They throw us the wolves just as fast as they could kick us too. You see what I'm saying? And I think a lot of people think on Republicans, well, if I just do this or do that, I will join that. It's like chasing a dragon. You know what I'm saying? Like you're always you never catch them. You never catch them. Never catch them.
Right.
Putting this carrot in front of you. Just go to work. Just go to work. Just go to work. Just pay. And then on top of that, don't say, why am I never catching the dragon? But let's blame black people in Anacostia, D.C.? It doesn't make sense. What? Especially when those people are, when it comes to this country, it's going to be hard to find more patriotic people than at least the black people that many of us come on a day-to-day. We all get caught up in stupid stuff on social media, but when you talk to a person, this is the whole point about this is you recognize those people love America just as much as I do. Yes. They might have a different perspective. It doesn't mean they hate the country.
No, we don't. We just get tired of being kicked by the country.
Well, that's the thing. And man, I couldn't agree more. And I don't blame you because poor white people or middle-class white people say, well, I don't want to be kicked. I don't want to be the kicked next. So you see what I'm saying? So we're not kicked now. I don't want to be kicked next. Those people have been kicked. Those people, black people, we don't want to be next. So we better kind of insulate ourselves from that.
Insulate, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think
it does. It makes a lot of sense, but we don't have the thing about American descendants of slavery. We didn't have any dual allegiances whatsoever.
Right.
We are totally invested here from a lot of different aspects. Okay. Yeah. But the thing is this, and I spend a lot of time in bars. That's what I do. But most of my life, because I've made good money, I've always lived in upper middle class, mixed or mostly white neighborhoods. So I've had a lot of interactions with white folks. And we were, I was in a bar one day and we were talking about reparations. I don't know how it came up, but this was like years before this. And some of the folks there were coming up with different reasons why, you know, reparations shouldn't come about, and you guys should get over it. Right. And, you know, racism is over and all this other stuff. And I brought up a scenario. I said, check this out. I said, what do I said? And it was a silly scenario, but it was kind of telling how people responded to it. I said, you know what would you say if let's say we forgot about this country and white folks paying reparations, right? And the Japanese, out of some epiphany or whatever, decided to be generous to African Americans, right, and give us reparations. It won't cost you a dime. Right, they said, well, that would be wrong too. Because if you're truly American, you shouldn't be accepting money from a foreign power like that. I mean, because if you accepted that, you know, there'll be agendas and preconditions and all this other stuff. So in other words, and the government wouldn't let that happen. Right. And I said, wow. So I said, these guys just don't want us to get anything. They don't want us to be repaired, period.
Even if it didn't come from their own, you see what I'm saying? It's like
another country. If it came from another country, yeah.
See, that's, guys, I think part of the problem on my side is people say, I don't want, you know, this clown who shot those cops the other day. I don't even know if he's black or not. You know what I'm saying? We don't want him to get it. And see, that's the issue that I think a lot of us say. We say, those guys are clowns. We don't want those guys to get it. And I think, look, at the end of look, we got clowns on every single, there's clowns all over the place.
True.
I think, I don't know. I'd sit there and I get that. You don't want these, you know, clowns to get it. But and I don't even know if that guy, I don't know. I'm just using that for an example. But going back to your thing, Arthur, is like if the Japanese dropped the money in there, they still wouldn't want blacks to get it because why you deserve that, because we have all these clowns that are going to get the money. And that's, you know, I don't know. I think that's a valid point to some degree. But then I think at the end of the day, that still doesn't solve the fact that there was a takings from, I cannot get over the fact that the government took property that wasn't theirs, and that was real human beings. It needs to be made whole. It's that simple. And I don't understand why this is even that controversial. And Cynthia and I were talking about just, you know, like going back to, you know, your mom. Actually, would you mind, because I'm sure I'll have some people on here too, Cynthia, like they say, well, black Africans come here and they do well. And you brought up a point that was pretty interesting to me about why they, like your own mom come from Jamaica and like why she did well where other native-born American blacks don't do well. And would you mind just touching on that a little bit? Because I thought that was actually incredibly important.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to go just turn my fan on. Hold on just a second.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Do your thing. So one of the points, and this is when we were, when I was discussing a book that was recommended. Matter of fact, this is a book that we just finished reading with Yvette Carnell's book club. Shout out to Yvette. Shout out more. When we were reading Immigration and the Remaking of Black America. And one of the things that I just, when they were going through the timeline, when it came to like, you know, Black immigration in America, you know, one of the things that I remarked is like, this looks like a timeline of my family on my mother's side. And one of the things that happened with my mom is that my grandfather was here first. He was a migrant worker that actually immigrated to the United States in the 1940s. He came back, he went to Jamaica, I want to say like a couple of times before he actually stayed here permanently. He was able to, through the company that he worked with, they were able to kind of swing for him to be able to become a permanent resident. And then eventually, I think he became a citizen. I think so. And then as time went on, he sent for other relatives, including my mother. Now, my mother came in 1963. And when she came, she already had some additional schooling that was beyond, like, you know, what we would consider high school. And she was very smart. She still is very, very smart woman. And because she had that additional schooling, she was one of the selected immigrants per se, that was able to come through and be able to, you know, kind of like assimilate into some type of education here in the United States. And eventually she ended up getting certification, became a lab technician, and worked for the University of Chicago for years, you know. Now, one of the things that that book pointed out is that a lot of times Black immigrants that come to the United States oftentimes have additional education available to them, you know, through whatever type of status that they have, especially if they have an elite status in their home countries, that, you know, some that Native Black Americans may not necessarily be privy to here. And it's only like about 16% of Black Americans that actually have a graduate, a bachelor's degree or any type of degree at all of the entire population. So there's still a very wide disparity when it even comes to like college educated. And even if you do have like college education, it doesn't necessarily denote that you're going to be better, because in some, or do better financially.
Right.
Case in point, I'm still trying to pay off my student debt. Right. That's there. But on the other hand, still have, I wish I had this chart, where you still have a section of Black Americans that actually completed college and are not, and are doing worse economically than white counterparts that never graduated from high school. So, and oftentimes, like, even if you look at like some of the, if you disaggregate Blackness and you look at Black immigrants, especially those who were able to come here and take advantage of some resources, especially when it comes to education, they're able to do much better. Even if you, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people that's like ADOS in the chat are familiar with a study that was done called the Color of Wealth Studies, where, and it was pushed out by the Samuel Dubois Cook portion College of Duke University. Sandy Darity was one of the contributors of that particular study. And one of the things that they did was they pulled out Black immigrants by nationality, etc., and was able to see how they were, what their positionality was economically. And I'll give an example. $200 liquid was the median Black family in California, versus I believe African Black was like around what, $12,000, $13,000 into that effect. So you see like a large chasm, even with Blackness, and it comes to like wealth and where they are as far as like how they even do. And even in the book, it even talked about how a lot of Black immigrants don't even live by a lot of Native Black Americans. A lot of them are going to white neighborhoods. I remember even talking to, I was talking to another Black immigrant, because next week, you guys, we're going to actually do a roundtable with Black immigrants and another Black person that's from Nigerian descent that lives in the UK, and we're going to have like a diaspora talk. So make sure you tune in for that. Thank you. One of our moms. Shout out to Nick. That's the particular study. So, but they talked about how when they were even here, because of like their parents were able to move them into a predominantly white neighborhood because they could afford it. Their parents were professionals, and oftentimes they really didn't encounter a Native Black person or ADOS person until they were much later in life.
Right.
And even in that particular vernacular, they already had, because of like different tropes that are stated about Black Americans, about how these people are, and even said that, okay, you don't want to associate with them, right? You don't want to associate with them because they're poor, they're ghetto, they can't talk, they're uneducated, they're blah 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 blah, all the alls, right? And I was even told, because like my mom being an immigrant, by another immigrant who happened to be from Greece. He told me I was one of the good ones.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like, what does that mean, sir? He said, you was raised in the house and you went to school and you can string a sentence together. So you're one of the good ones. And I was like,
but I think doesn't that show the point about reparations for American blacks of slavery descent? Because you're sitting there thinking, inherently, if a Nigerian guy could come here and has $12,000 of liquidity, and American blacks only have 200, there's something has broken there, which inherently goes back to slavery. It's just so inherently obvious to me. I'm sitting there thinking, if all these people can come here and do well, the one group that isn't doing well, and look, I know there's white people poor, I get it, but the one group that isn't, what is the cause of that? And don't tell me is that they don't want to work.
Well, the reason why, and the other aspect too, is because in actuality, there's always a differentiation between black immigrants and Native American black people, in that they have some access to whiteness that we don't have.
What do you mean?
And they make, in other words, it's like entree, privilege, access to things that they normally block American descendants of slavery from. And even when it comes to the immigration counselors, they tell them, don't be associating with those blacks. And I found that out when I lived for 8 years in New York City.
Yeah.
And many of the immigrants that I knew personally, that I gotten friendly with, would tell me this stuff that they would tell them at the immigration office about avoiding American black people.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You know, the other thing too, I did not meet one immigrant from either Africa or the Caribbean that had less than an associate's degree coming here.
Good. That's what Cynthia was telling me last time we spoke, Arthur, is that a lot of these guys come here, they're already kind of the cream of the crop from the country from which they come.
Exactly.
And so to say, well, this proves that there's a discrimination, all that, I don't think it proves anything. I just think, look, if I take your best and I put them in any, China, we can easily say, hey, look, there's no discrimination against whites in China. What you see what I'm saying? I was like,
that's exactly correct. Because like, here's the thing. If you take, first off, even if we're looking at Africa, just that entire continent, and people who will come over from that continent here, they would have to have some sort of resource to even afford to get here in the first place.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Let alone, and matter of fact, and even like to purchase like the visas, that you would need in order for you to stay here. I mean, they're in the hundreds of dollars, and then like depending on the type of visa that you will come in on, even more and more expensive, and that's one of the reasons why Biden and Harris is trying to reform that to make visas that from immigrants, especially in India, a lot easier to access because they're not cheap. So any person that is going to be able to get that, they're going to have like some type of resource, some type of, attachment, right? In order for them to even get here in the first place, let alone to be able to, to do well. And so, and even like when I even think about my mom, her attachment was her education, right? And his resource with his company that was able to send for her to come. And it wasn't until like a lot more of my family actually immigrated after 1965 because of laws and different policies, things of that nature. A good number of them came in the 80s after Reagan reformulated immigration, but even in that particular case, it was easier even to come from the Caribbean because it's not as expensive to come from like a Jamaica, from a Barbados, from even the Central America, what have you.
Right.
If you happen to do that versus coming all the way from across the pond, right?
Can I ask you guys a question about immigration, actually? Because this has always been a sticking point to me. Is it seems like Black Americans are always kind of the last persons, like everyone. So going back to the Democratic Party, let's just use that for example. It seems like they're bending over backwards for the Latino vote, right? Because they already have the black vote wrapped up. And I'm sitting there thinking, and this is where I push on the Republican, not that anyone listens to me, but I say, do you not recognize that the Republican Party, if we could just get, if we could double Trump's vote, which ain't much. I mean, my goodness, we had 8% of black vote. If we could get 16%, it's over. And we don't have to do that by going above and, hating on people. But we just say, look, a lot of these illegal immigration are hurting, poorer communities of Latino. I get that, but also black too. And you all think, I don't want to put words in my mouth, that you kind of been sold a short stick here? Because, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tell you this, Josh. I'm going to give I'm probably wrong, but I'm going to give my little lightweight prediction here. I think that Trump is going to be reelected, and this is why. The Democratic Party, more and more black people are waking up to the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party. First of all, we've never had a president that was a descendant of American slavery. We had Obama, whose white parent was a descendant of American slave owners, and his dad was from Kenya. Okay, right. And now they're trying to push a Kamala Harris on us, who is Jamaican and Indian, from India. But they've turned off a lot of black people, because a lot of us are seeing is that they're not giving us any policies. They're not giving us any platforms that we could hold on to. And there's got to be a lot more than just, we got to get rid of Trump. Matter of fact, a lot of black men, especially after Simone Sanders told black men to shut up and vote, a lot of these black men have shut up and they're gone over to Trump.
But Simone Sanders from Biden? Or she with Biden?
Yes, she's with Biden.
He said a black man is shut up and vote?
Yeah, just shut up and vote.
Yeah, just shut up and vote. and it's kind of interesting. One of the things that I observed when I watched the Republican National Convention. Yes, I'm a masochist, and I watched it. And I
didn't watch the Democrats or the Republicans.
You didn't watch either?
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that was smart, and maybe that's the reason why you have some peace in your life, right? But I did not. I said, nope, I'm watching.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I watched more of the RNC than I did the DNC. I only watched a few speeches here and there. Anyway, one of the things I noticed about the RNC is that they were trying to really, I think that they're trying to pull the black man vote. I really do. And the reason being is because they made sure that they had plenty of representation on their stages of black men, whether it be Republican, is he a senator? Tim Scott?
Oh, yeah. Tim Scott's a senator.
Yeah, Tim Scott. And then they also had, some other professionals and other, congressmen who happen to be black that are Republican. They even had this one person, I forgot his name, who spoke, who was he was a civil rights activist, and very much so proud Republican out of his mouth. And, and he was right in a lot of cases when he talked about the Democratic Party not offering any policy that, Black Americans really could jive with, and it's definitely nothing specific. I mean, oftentimes what happens, even when we did like a dive into the Democratic National Convention's platform, 2020, it was very rare. I think that maybe we counted on one hand how many times that Black Americans were mentioned by themselves. Always Blacks, Latinos, people of color. Blacks, Latinos, people of color, Native Americans. It was all, we were never mentioned on our own. Even they had, it was also interesting that they said in their platform that we know that we cannot we can't answer race issues with race policies. However, they still managed to shoot in that people of color when it comes to policy. And the thing about it is, and I said it, Arthur said it, other people have said it, is that you our position in the United States is extremely unique. No people of color were slaves.
That's what I'm exactly.
They weren't. No people of color, and no people of color on the macro level experienced Jim Crow.
Right.
And so like you can't answer their plight by saying that, oh, we're just going to get like a wide paintbrush and come up with these particular policies they're supposed to affect minorities and people of color, and everything is going to be okay. No, it does not work like that. If there were specific things that was done to this group that made them a bottom caste, made them virtually wealthless, made them also, a contagion of wealth, as Yvette Carnell likes to say.
Right.
And you have to have specific policies that are geared towards them to fix what America broke.
Right. And then on top of that, all of these things were primarily done by the Democratic Party over years. Okay. So in other words, Biden and Kamala, you're actually missing out on an opportunity to atone for the sins of the past of your party. Because, you got to remember now, the Democratic Party was a party of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah.
The party of the White Citizens Council. Yeah. Party of a whole lot of other groups that are not as famous, but were just as effective. And now when it's chance for you to do something, you're going to take a specific injury, a specific complaint, and then devolve it into this people of color mishmash, which dissolves into nothing the further into it you go.
Yeah, that part of my French, that pisses me off. Look, I'm a white guy, so theoretically I'm not a BIPOC. I've always said, why are you throwing black people in with people of color? I don't understand that, other than it's inherently, it's lazy. It's not.
It's very lazy.
Yes. That's exactly what it is.
Yes, exactly what it is. BIPOC. It sounds like a disease.
Politics.
So
I wanted.
No, go ahead.
So I wanted to, because like we're at the hour, I wanted to get into some of these comments that you got, Josh, from when you did your video, and I know that you even mentioned about historically how even the Democratic Party has been very averse to Black Americans, especially that was the slavery party. A lot of people just kind of switched allegiances only about over 50 years ago, so it's not that long. But regardless, I wanted to pull up some of these comments that you got, and I was going to read a few of them.
Yeah, please.
And then, hopefully we can kind of address them. So,
love to hear your take. Absolutely.
I want all of us to chime in. Okay, so the first comment that I was going to read that you got on your video was, "I'd say you are delusional if you think your plan will solve anything and that there would be no more affirmative action and no more anything after reparations. If anything, more handouts and more unwarranted rewards would be the result, because people would know whining and guilting works on both political parties on the matter, and both parties would be trying to buy the votes of the special interest groups."
Yeah. I know who wrote that too.
Well, I was going to put the comment up, but I didn't want to show the name. So,
and he's not a bad guy, but I have to say, I think a lot of people on my side think that. I really, really do. Yeah. It bothers me because, again, I think they think there is a BIPOC group that's going to say, well, them next. Now we got, not American Indians, but people from India and Latinos and all this. And I say, no. We got to focus on this one thing. But unfortunately, the whole BIPOC thing kind of screwed all that. So, and that's what I think a lot of white people and Republicans think.
Over time, there was a BIPOC way before BIPOC was even formulated, because affirmative action originally was formulated just for American blacks.
Right.
Then over time, white women were included, this group, and then it is at the point, whereas now Black people get maybe 5% of whatever benefits are expended by affirmative action. White women get most of it.
That's man, Arthur. I did a video just real quick yesterday. I have these two wealth management firms. They're so diverse and everything. And I said, it's weird. You got 100 people between you, and you got 2 blacks. That's it. And both are black women, not one black guy on there. And they're both leftist progressives. And they freaking, one guy, he was like yelling at me because I was calling him out. They had the whole thing. And he's like, this is like a couple years ago. I said, you guys claim to be all this. I don't see any black men, and I only see 2 black women on 100 people of your board of directors. And inherently that's racist, right? And I don't think it is necessarily. But what I'm trying to say is what's good for the goose is goose for the gander, whatever that term is. And the hypocrisy of it, because all the people who get the benefits are the rich white ladies. We all know this.
Right.
Everyone sees it a mile away. And yet because the white ladies have all the political clout and no one wants to offend them, everyone's like, okay, we'll use affirmative action. That's supposed to go for people who actually were denied. Anyway, sorry.
Right now we have a Democratic Party that's figuring out things to do for DACA. People that aren't even citizens. And what did they come up with lately? This Indian American thing? Or people in India that are not even in India. The Democratic Party has a platform for them for benefits for people that have not even arrived in the country yet. But when it comes to black people, Kamala Harris says, I won't do anything specifically to help black people. No. She said that out of her mouth.
The Republicans are just as guilty, though. We like the cheap labor. You know what I'm saying? You all like the cheap votes. We like the cheap labor because What do y'all think about this guy? His comment. I mean, any thoughts on that, or what he was saying about the? Anything else to add? Because I think that's pretty interesting. I think that represents a lot of people on my side that have thoughts on reparations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I one of the things that I would even say about this particular comment is that, and you all kind of brought it out, is that affirmative action never did what it was supposed to accomplish.
Never.
And if it did, then we still wouldn't be dealing with the chasm of the racial wealth gap.
Yeah.
And I remember, and then I'll go to this next comment. I want to tell a short little story. When I started to become more active in the reparations movement, specifically the ADOS reparations movement, I would put up different articles on social media concerning this particular topic. And at the time, I had a lot of conservative white professionals as friends on Facebook. Don't ask me how that happened, but it did. Oh well. So one person was a lawyer, and he commented on the article by saying that when he went to law school, affirmative action happened to start to transpire, because this was like in 1971.
Yeah.
And his freshman class started out with 35 blacks. By the time that he graduated, only 2 graduated. And then he said, so why did that happen? And I said, I don't know. I didn't go to your school.
Right.
But I will say this, and this is just from my own personal experience, being away in college, that even if you do get like financial assistance, it still takes additional money to stay and be in school.
Right.
Because you still have books, you still have living, you still have a lot of different expenses that a lot of college students don't really understand or are privy to until they get to the institution.
Yep.
So oftentimes college students have to rely on their families in order to kind of help them stay afloat while they're away. And, and I remember like, oh my goodness, my dad, he used to tear me a hole because I was calling him almost every week, talking, can you send me? Can you send me? Can you send me? I need $100. I need $50. I need, I need $300. Another school fee came up. I need you to pay this. You know what I'm saying? He's like, you know what? If you call me one more time, I got cussed out so many times.
Right.
But anyway.
Oh, not to mention my kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got a son and a daughter. They're calling me, Dad.
Right.
And I'm, no, Dad. Okay, I'll pay for that, but I'm not paying for that.
Right. And so when that happens, and I can just imagine like a lot of these so a lot of these students that I would assume that were Black going away to school for the first time.
First time, yep.
Assuming a lot of these different debts that they were not, that they probably couldn't even take care of, and oftentimes that probably, you know, forced them to leave school. I mean, I even know that when I was in school, like a lot of my counterparts, that happened to them.
Yeah.
Even if they ended up getting like their tuition completely paid for a scholarship, right? But the tuition didn't cover all the other out-of-pocket expenses, let alone room and board. So they couldn't even take advantage of, you know, just getting the scholarship money because their family couldn't keep them afloat while they were in school. And that happens to a lot of ADOS people because we don't have wealth, you know. So like this whole thing concerning like affirmative action and, you know, saying that, well, if that was your reparations, Black people, it's a fallacy because it wasn't. It's not the way that it's been implemented and the way that, you know, it's supposed to assist, and especially since it was originally designed to give a leg up to Black Americans after, I want to say that's Title VII that was approved, I want to say in either 1964 or 1965. I believe it was part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Then, and if everybody can get it, like anybody who's considered a minority can get it, then that's still going to dilute or muddy that particular water so that the people who need it the most are not going to get it. They're not going to get it in the proper way.
And the connections too. I mean, my goodness, I just think real quick, because when I was growing up, I tried out for a baseball team in Maine. I was just a poor kid. My dad wasn't there. This 1922 glove that no one, you know what I'm saying? It was just nothing. And the kid I was competing with, his dad had all the fancy gear. His dad had a connection with the coach. His dad had the connections. Who got cut? Me. Even though I think I played better. And, you know, I still look at this today. I said, wait a second. The only reason that kid got on there because his dad knew the coach. He had all the fancy schmancy gear and all that stuff. So we're going to take some poor Black kid from Anacostia. We're going to say, you did pretty good in high school. We're going to put you in University of Chicago Law School. And you got no family support financially. You know what I'm saying? You've probably never been out of Washington, D.C. And we're going to say, hey, you can't survive on your own. Is that shocking to anybody? I mean, my goodness. Right. It seems to me that would make sense in more cases than not, just because there's no support, like you're saying. It like you said, but the whole thing that's silly. I think that's a silly argument, especially what Arthur was saying earlier, that the majority of people who benefit from affirmative action are not Black Americans. You know what I'm saying? It's white women, no other way around.
Well, I'm getting a little jealous, Josh, because I'm looking at the chat here, and the likes for you is outpacing me 5-1. So
they don't know me, Arthur. They don't know who I am. I'm a new guy. Everyone likes the new guys.
Yeah. We got a few of them. I was this one right here.
See, look at
I appreciate that. You know, I appreciate that. We got a question from the chat. I wanted to highlight this one. What is going to stop rich white people from separating Blacks from their reparations? That's a good question.
Rich white people from separating Blacks. I don't get. I'm not on. Y'all know that I'm confused by the question. Is
I think that what they were asking is what is going to make Black people, if they happen to get reparations, not spend it all frivolously on, you know, in whatever, and just give it all to white folk. I would tell that person, and then, you know, hold on, let me see if I can find this. Okay. So I would tell you, CB, that I would direct you to go to ADOS101.com to kind of get an idea of what reparations look like. First off, reparations is not just a check.
Right.
It is not just a check. Now, money, as far as like direct payments to American descendants of slavery, is part of it, but it's not all of it.
Right.
It's going to be a series of initiatives and set-asides to a distinctive portion of the population to help repair what was broken on a holistic manner. So, you know, and a lot of that could be, you know, education grants. It could be assistance with purchasing homes. It could be assistance with, you know, starting businesses and keeping businesses afloat. It could be, it's a lot of things.
Right.
Anything that was that was done to these people to separate them from being able to accumulate and build wealth, the set-asides would help remedy and repair. So you're going to now, and also saying this, let's just face it.
Yeah.
You are going to have a section of folk that get reparations that will trick off their money.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to happen. Because here's the thing. There is going to be always people who get sums of money and they will spend it on whatever they want. I mean, we even see this with rich folk who get inheritance from like family members and they trick off their money too, because they may not necessarily be fiscally responsible.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue, and I believe that there's like studies and data to actually back my argument up. I can't pull them up right now, but I'm just going to put it out there that you do have a large contingency of Black folk that's descendants of American chattel slavery that are actually very fiscally responsible. Mm-hmm. You know, and a lot of times that has to happen because since we don't necessarily have a lot of wealth to work with, we have to be very money conscious. I know I am. Mm-hmm. I am. I watch every dollar.
Well, actually, I'm gonna tell you. So I'll tell you what. If reparations does pop off, and we get our first checks for, let's say, to close the wealth gap, there are 3 areas that you're going to see a big spike in. Number 1 is going to be Home Depot. Black people, yes, Black people basically are not going to be moving out of their neighborhoods. They're going to be improving the properties that they already have. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is going to be the real estate sales industry. Yeah. There's going to be a big spike in home sales. Mm-hmm. And the third spike you're going to see is a lot of business startups. That's
it right there. That's what Republicans need to recognize. They're not going to sit there and freaking stuff it up their nose. They're Black and go start businesses, which is entrepreneurial, which is Republicans. Ah!
Right. You know, the thing is this, and let's take the Black people are extremely entrepreneurial.
Exactly.
We are. Let's take. I'll give an example that happened recently in Chicago. Let's take the illegal part out. Right. Yeah. There's a girl here that they've arrested many times, and she runs a ring that sells loose cigarettes.
Hey.
This young woman, who only has a 7th grade education, makes $10,000 a day selling loose cigarettes. Right. And she has a complicated, multi-layered organization of over 1,000 people. That's a business person.
Without question.
Without question. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The burn downs that were happening during 1919 Red Summer, these were all business districts.
Yes.
A lot of your individual lynchings were that of Black businessmen that were out competing whites or Black people that owned property that refused to sell or be run off. So what they would do, they would just lynch them and take the land. So most of the time when you saw all of these assaults against Black people, they were for economic reasons, because we were doing things to improve ourselves away from white supremacy.
There's a young lady in Arizona who is doing a haircutting business on African braiding. But they said you cannot do that unless you have 2,000 hours of cosmetology or whatever, cosmetology, yeah.
Right.
And it's like, but the cosmetology courses don't teach anything on African braiding. They said it doesn't matter. That's another thing, a Republican, the conservative case, that's a barrier to entry for young, poor, in this case, a young Black woman who said, I am trying to serve a demand that the community wants, but because it's top down from the freaking the what's called the incumbents, they don't want the competition. They're going to keep her out. I said that's racism 101.
Right
for her, but I also
and even to add a cherry to your point, if this young woman is an ADOS woman and she is made to pay additional schooling to do something that she already knows how to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when it comes to braiding, you really don't need a cosmetology license, because there's no chemicals that are involved with it. Unless you look at hair grease, I don't know, like you just put it in there and call it a day. You know what I'm saying? But if she's an ADOS woman and she's trying to, be like a proper business person so that she can do it legitimately, she may have to be forced underground in order for her to be able to serve the man. And possibly even if she's caught, she might get all this other stuff that's even more hindrances against her. And then, but if you have another person who may be from the diaspora, who comes from an elite class, who already has like a resource, they can get that license and just go ahead and open up their shop and call it a day. And it happens a lot, you know what I'm saying? For a lot of people who are able to even do this particular service, but because they don't necessarily have the capital or resources,
that's exactly it.
They get locked out.
There is a happy ending though, Cynthia, is that
tell me, I love happy endings.
What's that?
I said, tell me, I love happy endings.
No, the Republican governor, Ducey, said we're getting all rid of this crap. You can't keep barriers of entry of young entrepreneurial women who happen to be black in this case from starting a business that people who don't, if they don't want to get their hair braided, they don't have to go there. They can go somewhere else. And then there's also a lawsuit taken by the Institute for Justice, which is a libertarian law group that goes to all these various places where they have all these barriers of entry that don't affect wealthier white people, but they all affect poor inner city black people. They said, you can't do this unless you follow these rules and regulations. And people are like, I don't have 2,000 hours. I got 2 kids to raise. I can't go to school for 2,000 hours to do something that's not going to teach me. And it's very interesting. So that, again, kind of the mesh of the poor Black Americans who are trying to do what they're normally good at, which is entrepreneurial. I mean, you know this, but entrepreneurial, being business owners, and the Republican side of things is that there's a natural connection there. And I'm just it's not Republican like the GOP. I'm just saying the more entrepreneurial basis, which seems like the Democratic Party has lost many, many moons ago. And they say, we want these people to be self-sufficient. How do we do that? By just letting them create their own businesses. Some are going to succeed.
Well, there's been a lot of barriers to Black people because in actuality, I will say personally that there's a lot of aspects to the Republican platform that I do like. It's just that you got certain individuals that talk certain ways, and that marketing does not resonate.
Arthur,
you know what I'm saying.
I wrote an essay one time for which I won the NAACP award when I was a
really
okay. I did, and I gave a speech in front of the mayor of Atlanta came up, and they must have thought I was black, I guess, because Joshua is my first name, and so I won, and it was against affirmative action because what I'm saying right now is back in 1994. Long story short, I got invited to a Republican group of Black business entrepreneurs in D.C., something 21. I can't remember what it was, something 21. I forgot what it's called. But anyway, and they had Jack Kemp. Remember Jack Kemp, the old quarterback?
Yes, I remember him.
And he was in there, and I'm sitting there thinking, he's talking all this, just nothing is great from if you're – I said, can you just talk that people can understand? For heaven's sake, he's talking all this stuff about entrepreneur zones and lower tax cuts and this, that, and the other. I said, that's fine. But at the end of the day, people just want to work and they want to be successful for their families. And I'm sitting there going back to what you said about marketing. I'm sitting there thinking, there's no one this isn't going to get anyone to vote for us other than, kind of the connected already, if that makes sense. And I admit Ronnie did the same freaking damn thing, and the whole thing is just nuts. And I'm sitting there thinking, can you guys just pull your head out of your butts and just talk like regular human beings to regular people, for heaven's sake? And that's why I feel like the Trumps there, because at least I get it. I get it. I'm not, but at the end of the day, he talks at least a talk that most people can understand, like him or hate him, but at least he talks like normal people do. The Republican Party is just so hoity-toity, and I'm like, no one gets that stuff, man.
Right,
White people don't get it. Never mind freaking black people who've never heard that the Republican Party might have some things that are good for them. It's
right. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of us are starting to realize, especially being more an agenda-driven voter versus a party-driven.
Yeah.
Because I've voted for Republican candidates in the past.
Me too.
Like
Me too.
And it usually ended up being more like local politics versus nationally. But, I believe that a lot of us, as long as the candidate is adhering to an agenda that we present to them and say, you going to do this or not, that's who we go for. We're not necessarily so, there's more of us that's starting to wake up to not necessarily being so like, I just got to vote blue no matter who, or I'm gonna vote red or I'm dead. I don't know. I just made that up.
But you know what? But you know what, Josh? Yeah. This year, 2020 is the year of transformative politics for Black people. You are actually going to see more Black people becoming part of the Republican Party, part of the Libertarian Party.
Yes, that's right.
And also being extremely selective on an individual basis with people in the Democratic Party. We're not going to, after 2020, we are not going to be party people anymore. We're going to be candidate and agenda people.
Yeah, I see that happening because I see more and more of us like starting to like, well, let's read your policy, or we're going to go to your town hall. Let's ask your questions like, well, your policy, you said this. Can you expound on that? Well, when I looked at your policy, I didn't see anything anything to do with Black communities. What's going on with that? And then there's more of us that's actually activating in this particular space in order to really hold candidates' feet to the fire. Yeah. Say like, no, if you want our vote, what you gonna do for it?
I hope so, guys, because if you love America, you can't have 80% of whites voting this way, 92% of Blacks voting that way. That's bad. You know what I'm saying? That just creates, we're basically a uniform of skin color, and that's not good. That's bad. And look, it's easy for me to say as white guy. I get it. I completely, but it bothers me deeply, deeply, deeply when Republicans, Mitt Romney just says, we're not going to get any of those Black people votes. And then he goes on to prove it by not trying. Right. And then it pisses me off. On the other hand, when Joe Biden, he doesn't know the whole thing is just, the whole thing just makes me mad. I said, there's a select group of people in America who bore the brunt of this country, who are being overlooked because we want to have H-1 visas for Indians. I love them, and Indians. Again, not Native Americans, but Indians, they're great. But can we just, for 2 seconds, put aside that stuff and say, let's focus on our own citizens here. Let's make sure they're taken care of, and we can argue how to do this. But, let's make this let's take care of our own first.
And the other thing that I really would like white people to recognize is that despite all of the abuse that we've taken for centuries in this country, it's very few Black people that have succumbed to sedition or being a traitor to the country.
Right.
We haven't done that.
One of the most amazing things to me of Black people, how I sit there in awe. It actually brings tears to my eyes, thinking like I was just reading this, I just sitting there thinking what these people and you too have gone through, and yet to still here and push for fairness and equality in this country that has been quite poor to you guys, to you group of people. And I'm not trying to be a Ross Bro, you people. I'm just saying American Black. It bothers me dearly, and it's like, you guys get over that. I said, is it really that? Come on. Let's not demute. I don't know, but there's more to this. The fact that there's a group of people who have been so patriotic, and yet we've just kind of kicked them to the side and said, all right, get over it, guys. That's not right, which is my whole point about reparations. We're not repairing for every single person in America. We're saying there's a select group of people who have bore the brunt of this society who need to be repaired. It's nothing more than that. Now, how that happens, what do you say, ADOS 101, is that what you said, .com?
Yeah, ADOS101.com. And I even put another, I put this in the chat too, and this is specifically to CB because he was addressing a couple of things about the racial wealth gap and what reparations is supposed to accomplish. And so this is good further reading. It is 67 pages. It is kind of long.
I think I have that actually. I think a guy, my man Sam, had sent that to me, and he's a guy from the Navy who told me about his granddad. Same stories we've heard you guys share. And it's very interesting. And he actually went out of his way to get me 2 American flags that were flown over the Capitol building. What's that?
I even drink American wine. This is the Federalist from California. I'm so damn American, man. I don't even mess with French wine.
Okay, that's not true. But
Cynthia said that.
I thought we were going to wait for the libations until after the live.
No, now. But
so we're coming. Wait
a minute, Cynthia. The other thing that I want white people to stop saying is, I'm not going to pay. This is not. Reparations does not come from you. It comes from the federal government.
Right.
And if you understand anything about monetary policy, it doesn't even come from taxes.
Right.
Right.
It comes from debt. Okay. Just like, and they are definitely able to pay it. If these people are able to come up with, what is that, $6 trillion?
Yep. $2.2 trillion in less than 1 week.
In less than 1 week.
Right.
No.
Yep.
And I would also say one more thing, and then we're going to wrap up.
Okay.
Let's see. CBU stated.
CB's one of my guys. I know him. He's a good guy. He's a veteran.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. This is a couple things he said. Like, I didn't mean that blacks would spend it foolishly. The whole point of reparations is to close the racial wealth gap, right? Blacks armed with large
No.
sums of cash spending raises home prices. No, no, it doesn't. And also I mentioned previously, CB, that reparations is not just cash. It is a series of initiatives, including that will actually cause this particular group whole. And I'm going to do one. I'm going to give an example, and then I'll close this out. So. Are we all familiar with the Homestead Act of 1862?
No.
Okay. So the Homestead Act of 1862 was an opening of the West to Americans to actually come into particular lands and settle on them. The government gave out millions of acres of land, including some indigenous land as well, in order for people to go and claim this land. And not able to claim the land, they were also able to get land grants in order for them to mechanize the land. Not only that, Dr. King does it much better than me. Not only that, they were also able to get, education on even how to farm the land and how to make money off the land. And there are still people to this very day.
45 million white Americans directly benefit from the Homestead Act.
That is correct.
That are alive today.
They're still able to live off of the wealth of that one policy. And that policy was largely not open to Black Americans.
Right. It was really open to European Americans that just came here.
Right. So you had, you already had established white citizens that were able to take advantage of it, and also Europeans that were immigrating were able to also take advantage of it. And that was a policy. I want to say that it lasted for almost 100 years.
So people who just came over that literally got off the boat,
right?
Yeah,
they could, right. But people who were here, working,
exactly.
Yeah,
and again, 45 million white Americans that are alive right now are the direct beneficiaries of the Homestead Act.
So when you hear things like 7 generations, my family's been on this land, that could be attributed to the Homestead Act.
Matter of fact, like families like Tyson and Purdue, the chicken, they are an example of the benefit of the Homestead Act, because that's where they got started.
Mm-hmm.
And for the blacks, because they're a slave, but even the free blacks, they weren't able to get.
No, they weren't able to hold on to their land. At least, I'll give you an example of 1 million people in just Mississippi. Black people lost their land And this was in the early part of the 20th century.
But were they lost it because of the Homestead Act?
No. It was taken through force, through threats, through rezoning, all kinds of things.
They just got put out, essentially.
They just boom.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing that I want to mention too is that reparations is a debt. It has nothing to do with the present net worth of any Black person.
Right.
Oprah is ADOS. So that means that she would still be eligible for reparations.
Right.
It has nothing to do with handing out welfare or none of that stuff. It is a debt that is owed to the descendants of American slavery.
Correct. And also too, one more thing I wanted to mention, and I just put this video up as well. CB was also saying that I don't think that the racial wealth gap ever gets fixed until the education gap gets addressed. That's also a falsehood. That's a falsehood. In actuality, as I stated before, and let me see if I can find this chart real quick. Black Americans who happen to actually possess a bachelor's or more degree do not always fare as better as their white counterparts who don't even have a
high school diploma.
Don't even have a high school diploma. Let me see if I can find this chart.
I think it's in that Duke study, actually. I think I remember reading something about that on that 64-page Duke study.
Yeah, the Duke study actually addresses that. That showed. And matter of fact, let me see if I can share my screen because I have the chart. I'm always armed with charts. I like charts. Charts tell it better than I can, right?
You like Excel spreadsheets, Cynthia?
I'm sorry?
You like Excel spreadsheets?
I do.
Me too, I tell you.
I'm in Excel. I spent a whole lot of time in Excel. Okay, so let's see. Okay, alrighty. So like if you see this particular chart, and this is again from that Duke study, and also I believe that this information is also aggregated from the Federal Reserve and also labor statistics and things of that nature. So you see this particular chart says that the median household net worth by race and education. So on this particular side, you see that the median household wealth for post-college for white people are about $455,000, $212,000. For Blacks is $141,115. Some college is roughly about $269,000 versus Black was $70,000 to $19,000. Some college for whites is about $135,000 versus Black about $18,000. Some high school high school is still like $118,580 versus Blacks was $660,000. Less than a high school education, you still have $82,968 versus Blacks, which is about $2,775. So saying that education would be something that's really going to help as far as it helps, but it does not close the racial wealth gap. And because we even see, even looking at less than a high school education for whites, the median household is still at $82,968. I mean, that's more than a Black person with just a college degree, with just a bachelor's degree. Because post-college would be, a master's or more, right? So if this is a person that didn't even graduate high school versus a Black person that did graduate college, that means that education is not going to close the racial wealth gap.
I know we got to run. The one thing about that I don't like though is that median net household, and the drawback we have today is so many single moms raising children. You see what I'm saying? That's that Duke study tries to address that, But they try to say they basically try to say is basically racist to point that out. And I completely disagree. I'm like, wait a second now, because we have the same issue in the white community too. Single moms or single parents, but single moms, generally speaking, raising families. If you take it's the same is happening in the white community, just not as much, obviously, but is more and more prevalent in the white community too. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And when they talk about median households, they're taking households. The vast majority not anymore. Whites are not 2-parent households anymore, but we're still the majority, but not as much as it used to be back in the early 60s. And for blacks, it's even more.
I think that one of the things that not necessarily pointed out in this particular chart is that you still have, even when we're talking about single parenthood, specifically in Black communities, you still have a large contingency of Black people who may live with their partner, but they're just not married. And oftentimes that happens is because there could be like additional, and I'm using the word tax very loosely. Right. When it comes to what it makes sense for us to get married. I mean, and I'll give like an example.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. So like when you're a group that is in poverty, you experience like impoverished a life. Oftentimes that means that your credit may not be as good. Because because like oftentimes you're not going to always have money to pay bills on time. You got to do robbing the Peter to pay Paul, et cetera, et cetera. So, and we're going back to when we said that, Black Americans that descend from chattel slavery are largely a wealthless group, right? So, sometimes it would make more sense, even if you love your partner, you want to be with your partner and all these particular things, but because like if getting married means that your credit may impact mine, it's probably best for us not to get married. That way it can kind of open the door for us to be able to get more. I said, well, your credit is better on this one. Can you put this in your name? Or your credit is better than this. Can you go ahead and buy this car? Or, et cetera, et cetera. So there's still that particular portion of the population that's the case. It's not necessarily that all of them are being raised in single parent.
Oh, yeah, no, understood. But it's just two tax filing units. I will say, I was watching real quick, and I'll let you guys wrap up. But I was watching one of your videos you did. There's like 5 guys on 5. I guess it was mostly men, except for you, Cynthia. But I noticed at least I couldn't hear one of them, but at least 3 of them said that they were proud dads. And I said, man, I thought that was huge. And I just I went back to when I was first emailing Arthur. It's like, at the end of the day, when I was growing up in the Washington, D.C. area, the NOI was big in terms of kind of policing up the community from drug dealers and everything. And but I don't agree with all that, but I do think, having a family structure that they were advocating was huge. And I was very happy to hear that these young men were proud dads. That just maybe that's a good thing. And I think that's huge, and I'm very happy to hear it. I'm hoping there's not just with blacks, with whites too. Like you got to raise your kids, man, as a man, and if you don't, that's not good because young men need their dads. I just know that for a fact.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, even though like I was in a single parent household, because like my parents, they got divorced when I was young, but I had a relationship with my father.
Yes.
And when I wanted to see my dad, I could see him anytime I wanted to. Yeah. And one of the things that my parents made sure to try to do as much as possible is not allow their relationship to color my relationship with my dad.
Yeah.
So I definitely believe that, children, they need their parents. They need parents in their lives. They need to make sure that they have a relationship with them, and it definitely can help them as far as their outcome, when they become an adult, because they have the experience and the tutelage of their parents in their life. But that still don't close the racial wealth gap.
No,
it's important to have, and it's important to address. And the young men that you were referring to were the Be the Power team. Shout out to the Be the Power. Yeah. We got them in the chat right now. Also all airing on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Daylight Time. So they're great. And but yeah, it's important to have those particular families together, because I even believe that despite the issues that Black Americans have experienced as the years traversed in this nation, I really believe that, having a family there to have support, regardless of all the crap that they were dealing with, was definitely, a resource.
Right.
And that people who may not necessarily have, that even a family resource, that can be disheartening and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. No, I believe in family.
Well, just going back to your story,
the family can look a lot of different ways, but that support system is important.
The little girl watching the little girl get put in the fireplace and stuff, and you having what I'm saying? It's like the violence, the wife of a man like that, and then have the children. That's pure evil. How we started this whole thing off. Mm-hmm. That guy who violated that young lady, and then have the mom of that guy who violated that young lady take it out on the young children. You can't get more evil than that, man. That's like biblical crap there. And that violates the family, and then after all these years, sweeping under the rug and pretend it didn't exist. Racism is gone now.
Yeah, my great grandmother was 8 years old when that happened.
Yeah,
and the woman forced them to watch her do this. Mm-hmm. So it was.
Well, I appreciate you all having me on. I enjoy this immensely. This is fantastic. Obviously, having a dialogue is always good for society, for sure. It's a slow, steady pace. Unfortunately, I have a sneaky suspicion a lot of people are going to hear the word reparations on my side. They're going to just immediately discount it. I wish they would not. I want to have these conversations to say, look, just get it open a little bit, get it open a little bit, and then you never know. Next thing you know, we might be having parties in Chicago, who knows, and saying, hey, things are moving in the right direction. And I cannot say how appreciative I am for y'all having me on here tonight, for sure.
Yeah. And I want to thank you so much, Josh, for even agreeing to come on and having this conversation. And I agree. I think that having dialogues like this is so vital. They're so important. And I think that, and I'm a person that believes in, having constructive speech and constructive, even constructive criticism.
Yeah.
I believe that, if we can even have that, we can address a lot of these different things that happen so that we can kind of get on the same page and move forward. Because I believe that there's definitely a case for reparations on the conservative side, as well as the liberal side, as well as the middle of the road side, or moderate side, or whatever. At the end of the day, reparations is a debt. It's a debt. And it is way past due. And for any person, I like the way that Josh said it. Shout out to Josh Grayo, that's also in the chat from Be the Power team, who is a father. One of the things that he posted on when that comes up, as far as what slavery happened such a long time ago, right, and was alive that owned slaves. And one of the things that his answer was, the federal government was alive then, and they're alive now, and it's time for them to pay up.
Yeah, the federal government has that's still around. That was still making decisions today too.
That's right. So, Josh, I'm going to let you just give a quick spiel of people. If the people want to connect with you,
thank you, Cynthia.
What you do, have at it.
Well, I do a YouTube channel called Heritage Wealth Planning on YouTube, and mostly it's for how middle-class people can retire, and what I call quit their crappy old jobs. I hate with a passion the corporatists, where we all have to fall in line as little, just do what they're told, and just yes, and then get your freaking check and go back the next week when life's too short. Life's too short for that. So I've tried to tell people, guys, how they can quit their crappy old jobs, and you don't need $2 million. You don't. You just got to make sure Social Security is solvent and Medicare is solvent, and if you can make those things happen, most people are going to be able to get by fine. They just can in retirement, and that's what I try to show people on my YouTube channel. So they can go to Heritage Wealth Planning and subscribe or not. And but the more people that watch, the more ad money I get, and that's important. So I'm a capitalist, by the way. But that's
I'm not against capitalism.
Neither.
I'm not against capitalism.
No way. That's ironic, right?
Right.
Most people say, I need to get money to pay for my mortgage, to pay for my house, and pay for my car and all that. It works. I don't care if you're black or white. We all have bills to pay, and we all got to pay somehow. That's for sure. So, but I appreciate the shout out on that, Cynthia, because it's fun. And I do videos every day. And half the time I'm taking my dog, and I'll be picking up poop, and I'll be doing a video while I'm picking up poop. It's nothing fancy, but people seem to like it. So
right.
And there he is. So I think he's asking me to take him for a poop right now, as a matter of fact.
Okay. Well, we won't keep you long, Josh, so that you can do that for your doggy. Hey, Papa.
You see his tail wagging like.
I think that he heard outside, and that's all it took. I know that's like so true.
Thanks again, guys. God bless you guys, and keep up the good fight. And I appreciate you having me on. This has been fantastic. I've been learning a lot too, and and anything I can return the favor, I'd love to be able to do that again. So just let me know. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that. Yes. So everyone, and like I said, Josh's links are actually in the show notes below if you want to learn more about what he does, watch some of his videos. Like he said, he does that every day. I work a 9 to 5. I can't do that. But but I appreciate it. I do. And thank everyone for tuning in and watching. Again, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the YFNA News. Like if you like what we do, become a Patreon, buy us a coffee. Those particular links are in the show notes below. I need to update this list because I know that we have more Patreons. But I do want to thank our patrons, Best Name Ever, Marsha Filipello, and me, because I believe in what we do. And but if you all want us to see us grow and do better and things of that nature, please consider being that. And also, like I said, we also have the links. We're still supporting Tamara Johnson Shealy's run for Senate, who's running on the ADOS platform, and also our fellow mod. We're doing we're supporting them in our GoFundMe. All those links are in the page below. And also buy my green disc stuff. Buy it because I need a car. So that particular link is in the show note as well. And everyone, again, thank you, Josh, for coming here. Thank you all for tuning in. You all have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, and good
night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Oh, there you go. Wow, look at that. See ya.